Welcome to Gratitude Geek, the relationship marketing podcast helping DIY marketers find your micro influencer magic so you attract raving fans and repeat buyers. I'm your host, Kandas, and this week I'm joined by the queen bee of branding and my personal friend, Vicky Winkler. Vicky has worked in the field of marketing for over 30 years. She has worked in various sectors, including corporate, nonprofit, education, and even the Peace Corps. She owns two businesses, The Marketing Shop, a graphic design and printing business. And in 2022, she added a branding division to the business called Stillwater Branding and Design. She also teaches marketing at the college level. Welcome, Vicky.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
I hope you don't mind that I called you the Queen Bee of Branding. I know that's moniker was given to you.
I love it. I absolutely love it. Yep.
Okay. That moniker was given to you by a mutual friend. So tell us your story. How did you get to where you are today?
Gosh, how did I get to where I made a lot of mistakes, but I took a lot of leaps of faith. So I started out in the corporate sector. Working for General Motors. I got to see the Saturn car launch, be part of the startup marketing team, got to see the first car roll off the line. And fortunately was not there to see the last car roll off the line. But it was a wonderful time of just being part of that whole thing, that whole magic of the Saturn vehicle. And then after that, I left. That was when I went to join the Peace Corps. And I worked in Nicaragua in the small business sector. And then I came back and had this burning desire to do something more meaningful with my life and career. So I went to work for a nonprofit called New Horizons Rehabilitation Services, and I was their marketing director for 5 years. And then I decided I wanted to be an entrepreneur. And so actually I got pregnant and planned, but at that time I thought, well, I'll just go back to work. And then I asked my boss, well, how about I would work a few days at home and then a couple days? And he said no. And I said, okay, well then how about I start up a business and then I'll do your marketing still, but I'll just do it on my own. And that's when I formed the Marketing Shop 20 years ago, and have done that ever since. And then, of course, started the Stillwater branding about a year ago to add to that. I also am an adjunct professor of marketing at Macomb Community College.
I have so many questions. First of all, how cool that you worked on the Saturn. I never owned one, but I always thought they were such a neat idea. And I was really disappointed when they stopped manufacturing them.
Absolutely.
But I think that's what makes them special.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's a special, different type of car, you know, but honestly, with the way the automobile industry is moving, Saturn either would have had to go all electric or which I have a feeling though that Saturn would have been at the forefront of the electric car movement, just because they were at the forefront of so many different things. So that's cool. I didn't know about that little tidbit about you. What is something that you learned from working on that project?
That it's okay to take risks, even if it doesn't work out in the long run, because Saturn had just really formed a lot of influence. And I am still part of a Saturn Facebook group of people that still talk, and they bring out little trinkets that they found, like a little Saturn truck, a little miniature truck that they had manufactured, and that somebody pulls a banner out or something that they've had in their closet for all this time. So there's still this real energy around that whole thing. And it was amazing. I mean, they went to this piece of open land in Spring Hill, Tennessee, in the middle of nowhere, and created this factory and this facility and then the buildings. And it was this close-knit community, and we would have dinners together, and people owned horse farms, and people it was just a really amazing time. And so the relationships that I formed are relationships with people I still have today. And so I just think that there was still a lot of good lessons learned. And I think General Motors learned a lot from the things that Saturn did, even though it took on too much. I think it tried to transform things too revolutionary, and people weren't ready for that. But there's still a lot that was learned from all that were involved in that.
I'm not a car person, so I'm not in the loop on this, but what are some things that current manufacturers might be doing that they learned from that revolutionary company?
I think customer service and the whole importance of how do you treat customers. Just it isn't about that used car salesperson anymore. And so, while there is still that goes on in a dealership, there is still a lot of things that were changed with regards to how they treat customers.
Well, now I remember that they had set pricing, that you didn't negotiate price, which is the way that like CarMax or AutoNation works as well.
Yeah.
So other car sales groups, I don't remember which one it is that you can't negotiate price, but it takes the sleaze away.
Oh, I loved it, but people still wanted it, and the dealerships could not seem to adapt.
Yeah. But this is the best price. I mean, we're giving you the best price from the get-go. And it's kind of sad, because when you negotiate too much, sometimes the salesperson walks away with $100 profit from that or makes $100, which you can't live on that.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
And then so what are some things, because you said you worked in the small business division or the small business development area in Nicaragua with the Peace Corps. Right. So what did you learn there?
Oh gosh. So one of the things I did there is I lived with a family. So often families would own a small business. So this particular family owned a little store. They sold miscellaneous items, and then the whole family lived behind. And there was a big kind of a compound, I used to call it. It was sort of a square, and in the middle was where the livestock lived, and the pigs and the cows and the chickens running around, and all the people's rooms of all the families came into the center. And then of course things were gated off. So there was a lock, and but then you kind of came in this compound, and I had a room there. And so they brought me in to help this small business owner to just learn about basic business skills. And so they sold the craziest things. They sold kerosene, and they had a vat of it, and people would come in with their little containers, and they would scoop it in, and they would measure it out, and they would sell it to them. And then they had pineapples, and they had bed sheets, and just these odd things that they would get at the main market that they would drive to. So it was just as fundamental things. I sat down with them and I looked at their books, if you can call them that. And I said, okay, so you're taking this old jalopy to the market that has horrible gas mileage, and it's costing you that much. And then you're selling whatever product it was for this much. I said, you're losing money. You're paying people to buy your products. And they were like, oh my gosh. So it was really just very basic things. I also worked in the middle schools with a program where basically we were teaching the younger folks to go back to their families and teach them the business skills that we were teaching them. So they were bringing them back and teaching those basic fundamentals again. A lot of times that was cost, expense, and revenue, and that concept, was just a huge light bulb for them.
Well, I think that even here in the United States, people don't realize that their businesses are losing money with that unless they have someone to help them. So it's family-run businesses, especially generational businesses. Sometimes you just go through the motions and you don't realize that you're not making any profit. Right. So this is completely off topic, but you mentioned the layout of the house, and I have always wanted to live in a house like that had it's square shaped, and so the building is a square, and inside of the middle of the house is a building is nothing. It's open land. And then there's little rooms around the square. Mm-hmm. I love that style of house, and I can't remember what it's called, but there was a movie that had Whoopi Goldberg in it. It was a group of women that lived in a house like that, and I just was like, oh, that's a perfect house.
Yeah, it's fine when there's not livestock living in the middle of the little greenhouse area. It does have a name. I'm not sure if it actually applies to the facility that I was living in. I think there's a little more glamorous version of where this was.
But the practicality is it keeps the animals safe.
It keeps everyone safe, right? Mm-hmm. Because it's all built around, and then there's a nice iron gate with a big lock on it. Mm-hmm. And they lock everybody in at night. And because there's a lot, of course, it's a third world country, there's a lot of theft, and so yeah.
Yeah, but that style of house has been around for hundreds of years in Latin. They're in New Mexico, they're in Southern California. That there might even be some like that in Texas. That style of house has been around for hundreds of years.
Yeah.
And the parts of the United States that were colonized originally by Spain have a lot of buildings that way. I mean, most of the missions along the El Camino Real are basically that layout. Or a big gate. I mean, that's exactly what the Alamo looks like.
Yeah.
That's exactly what the Alamo looks like. I just always thought it was I fell in love with the design of the house because you have a little more privacy and then you have common area.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
You teach marketing at a college. And something that Ivan Meisner talks about is that people don't learn networking in college, that's an important skill. And you're teaching marketing. And I would argue that I would posit that networking is a part of marketing. So I know that you probably work off of a set curricula, but what is going on in the world of marketing today at the educational level that may be a little different than it used to be?
Well, obviously, so I teach, basically the two main courses that I teach is a kind of a marketing 101. And so, it's a really basic marketing. Then I also teach a marketing for entrepreneurs. And so that's a really fun class because they get to pick a business they either are thinking of opening or that it's just a hypothetical that they just find an interest in. And so they get to pick that, and then they work on a marketing plan all semester long. So obviously one of the big things that has changed, even in the time I've been teaching, is social media and how to use social media marketing. And so that's probably the biggest thing. But the core stuff about target marketing, picking a segment, not marketing to everyone, figuring out who that person is, like visualizing them and marketing to them instead of the students will come in and say, well, okay, who are you going to sell to? Everybody is going to want to buy my product because it's so good. And I said, okay, well, let's really talk about that 2-year-old and that 82-year-old or 92-year-old and the person at the poverty level and the person that's extremely wealthy. Really? Is it everybody? So that's probably the biggest concept. And it's still the one that when I meet with small business owners, that we have to step back and say, well, who are you really targeting? When we're going to put together a brochure for you, let's really talk about that target audience that you're trying to attract. You're going to attract other ones, but let's focus on the main ones, and the other ones may come along, but let's spend our dollars on targeting just, your main clients.
That's like foundational.
Yeah.
If you don't know who to market to, you can't market. This is such a good topic, but I want to go backwards a little bit. Okay. So your class teaching entrepreneurs how to market. Isn't that the kind of class that the guy who came up with the FedEx idea took? Where he came up with a business plan for FedEx and he got an F on his paper.
Oh gosh.
Do you know this story?
It was not my class.
No, I know it wasn't your class.
Yeah, I know.
But I think he was like at Harvard or one of the I don't know the story well enough to reiterate it, but from what I understand, he came up with the idea in a business class and he didn't pass.
Oh,
he didn't pass, and then he implemented it and took off. But that could be legend.
Maybe.
Which takes us back to Saturn, right? It was such a revolutionary idea that his fuddy-duddy marketing professor, which I'm not saying you are, but his fuddy-duddy marketing professor couldn't see past the revolutionary idea that it might work. Which is where Saturn was. I mean, Saturn worked really well for, I don't know, what was it, 15 or 20 years or longer than that, And again, Saturn may come back. I mean, it could come back.
Yeah.
Because time's caught up with it. Things change. And we have talked about ideal client avatars on this podcast so many times. I really would love to talk to you about it, but I have more things I want to talk to you. So guys, if you want to hear about client avatars, you can just search for them in the podcast. We're going to skip that and we're going to go forward. Although I would love to have that conversation with a marketing professor, there's other things that we can learn from Vicky today that are even better. So you and I, we belong to a networking group called BNI. It's Business Network International. We're in the same group. And our group is, and this is a really important conversation because there are people who, and it goes back to the FedEx guy's professor not being ready for change, right? So in March 2020, when the world shut down, BNI made a huge pivot. They had traditionally been an in-person networking group that met weekly. They're all over the world. There are chapters in, over 50 countries. Millions of people are members. It's a very dynamic, very interwoven community. But up until March 2020, you really only met with the folks that were in your chapter weekly, and then you got together for coffee or whatnot to meet them individually to get to know each other better. And after March of 2020, BNI went virtual for about 2 years. For about 2 years, most chapters were virtual. Now, a lot of them have gone back to in-person, but you and I both joined a chapter that was going to not go back to in-person. So we purposely, on purpose, joined a chapter to network virtually. And BNI also added some things like speed networking, which they didn't have before. So national speed networking is a huge part of my strategy, my marketing strategy, which is a completely different conversation, but I want to come back to that later. Anyway, the folks who caught on and were able to pivot and get out of the mindset of that's not the way we do things and go forward are thriving in this environment. Do you want to talk about that?
Sure.
There's a lot there to unpack.
Yeah, right. So, I mean, like you, I specifically intentionally joined the chapter I joined to have that more global remote mindset, and everything that we do here in my business, we can do remotely. While we do what we print materials, but then you just ship them to people and then they end up at the doorstep. So they go from seeing something on a screen to then seeing these, whatever it might be, a beautiful brochure on their doorstep. And so, I realized the huge benefits of being remote, the time saving, of having my staff here, and just being able to kind of quick, somebody says they want to meet you, quick, get on a Zoom call. And while, yeah, you could get on a phone call before, there's something a lot more beneficial about being able to get on a Zoom call. And I don't think that the face-to-face meetings are invaluable. And we still do that. But just the power of being able to work remotely and have partnerships and build relationships with people that and Kandas, you and I would never have met if it hadn't been for this. And look at all the things now that we do together and the interactions and connections that we have. And I've all of a sudden now my business we're doing business with people all around the country. And my business coach lives in England. And so amazing. It's just.
Didn't I introduce you to your business coach?
You absolutely did. And she's wonderful. And yeah. And there she sits in England in her time zone and I'm here and it works fabulously.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it does if you can embrace it.
Sure.
And which goes back to Saturn. Not everybody got it. Not everybody gets electric cars.
Mm-hmm.
Not everybody gets, but you have to embrace it. So I want to brag because some people are going to say, well, why would I need to go speed networking why would I need to go to national speed networking and meet people that live in other states when I have a local business? And my answer to that is because you never know when someone is going to move to where you live or when you're going to meet somebody who's going to move to where they live. But the other thing about speed networking is it's an hour long. So you get to meet with the sessions in BNI speed networking. I have a couple of different speed networking opportunities that I do. Some of them are one-on-one groups and some of them are, 6 people in a room for 10 minutes. It just depends on where it's going. But in BNI speed networking, it's 6 minutes in a room with somebody you may or may not have ever met. So Tuesday, literally, 3 days ago or 4 days ago, whatever, I don't know even know what today is. The very first person I am put in a room with is a man in San Francisco. He's a CPA who does tax consulting. He doesn't He doesn't do taxes. He does tax consulting. And he goes, Kandas, I'm so excited to meet you. And I was like, well, why is that? And he goes, because I follow you on YouTube. And I said, well, how did you find out about me? He goes, I saw you in speed networking a month or so ago, and I liked your vibe. And so I looked you up. And it's not even you don't even get to meet everybody there. There could be 150 people there, and you meet 5 or 6 of them that day. Right. But I said something that he liked and he started following me. And it's so magical when something like that happens.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he actually said, I really liked your last video, the one about ChatGPT. I'm like, this guy really does follow me on YouTube. So it just and my last 4 clients who actually, a client is somebody who gives you money, right? The last 4 people who gave me money were people I met in a speed networking or the other thing that we do, it's not speed networking when you have more than 1 people, it's more of a mixer. So they came from either a mixer or speed networking. That is where I'm meeting my clients. Mm-hmm. It's just, and this idea of getting on Zoom and meeting people that you don't know mm-hmm. and being stuck in, and now I'm not going to say every time I've been put in a room with somebody, it's been wonderful, because I have been put in rooms with complete utter duds that I'm like, what are you doing here? You have no personality, right? But it's so phenomenal. And I really wanted to talk to you about that because you and I have a similar view on it. And also, I'm such a fan of your work that I include your services in my highest coaching package. Mm-hmm. So in my premium coaching package includes your services because I'm such a fan of your work. Anyway, do you want to add to that? Because I just feel like I took over the conversation, which is a bad thing to do as a podcast host.
No, because I love to listen to you anyways. So yeah, I think that it's true. It's just amazing just the way even it's transformed my business, being able to meet people, make the connections. I met a writer in California. I met, I've met people that I'm just trying to even think off the top of my head. But after each speed networking, I'm always, I need to talk more to that person. Or I'll even look at the list and think, there's people on there that I didn't get a chance to have to get into a breakout room with. And I look on the list, I'm like, I'm gonna email them anyways, because it sounds interesting what their business is. And there's not enough even time in the day to follow up with all of the ones that are looking at all the people and think, I'd love to have one-on-ones with so many of those different people. Especially, I think in the field you and I are in, Kandas, and marketing, there's so many different aspects of it. And there's so many different interconnections. And like for me too, if I'm going to refer a writer, for example, writers can have very different vibes. And so it's good for me to have more than one that I can refer people to. I met a writer in speed networking that was a little cheeky, but I thought, there might be some clients that would really want that and really looking for that. And in fact, then I came across somebody, and I'm trying to think of what it was, that they were saying how they really wanted to do something different with their message. And they needed it to be fun and they needed it to be different. And I thought, well, that I got the guy for you. And I didn't think at the time that I would have someone that would need that kind of writer. But then lo and behold, a couple weeks later, I come across and I'm like, yep, I got the guy for you. And so, so it's good, because I might think to myself, well, I've got a social media person or a web designer that I was referred to, but it's good to have more than one person in your back pocket.
Oh yeah. The category or the profession that I refer the most to is virtual assistants. And I actually have 4 different virtual assistants that I refer to because they do very different things. And if somebody needs, I'm just throwing ideas out there, but if somebody already has a social media plan in place and they just need someone to post for them, I have a VA for that. As opposed to a social media marketer who does everything for you. In this instance, it would be someone who just needs someone to do the posting, right?
Sure.
I have a VA for that. And if somebody, needs help with their bookkeeping, but doesn't need a bookkeeper, I have a VA for that. right? The difference between bookkeeping and bookkeeper, I don't know if it's semantics, or language, but I have I have a VA for that. And then there's, instances where I'm like, okay, you don't need a bookkeeper, you need an accountant. So I have a referral for that as well.
Sure.
And even as a business coach, people may come to me and tell me what they need. And I'm like, well, I'm not the business coach for you, but man, I know this great business coach in London. She's fantastic. And I think she'd be a great business coach for you, So having that thing, I know a lot of copywriters, and the more, the better referral, because you don't give away the referral if I were to give you a referral, I would want it to be the right referral for you. So I am not going to refer everybody to you who needs business cards printed, right? Because if somebody has I can't even remember the name of that really cheap printing company. But if somebody just needs really cheap business cards, I'm not going to send them to you because that's a waste of your time. But if somebody wants their entire, printed marketing thing done with their logos and their headers and their what's it called? The paper. What's the paper called?
Like a brochure?
No, the paper that you put in the printer that has your header on the top of it. What is that
letterhead?
called? Letterhead, yeah, letterhead. The custom envelopes, the whole package. Yeah, that's not a waste of your time. I'm going to send that to you.
Right.
So, but if they just want cheap business cards, I got a chick in Texas who does cheap business cards, right?
I appreciate that.
I'm sure you do.
Right.
Okay. All right. You want to add to that?
The only thing I would add is that I think that for me as a business owner, it increases my credibility. When somebody I had someone come into my office the other day, and she was a counselor doing therapy, and she was starting a new business. And she said, well, I had, and she happened to be local. And she said, oh, well, I happen to have somebody do my headshots. And she said his name. And I was like, oh, is it this person? And she said, oh, well, yes, it is. And I said, oh, well, I know that person. And, oh, well, that's great. And I said, well, I can just ask him. I'll just email him directly and get your portrait photo that I'm putting on your business card right from. She's like, well, okay, great. So all of a sudden, my connections made me so much more valuable to her, because it took away that barrier of, well, now she has to go find the photographer's email and get the photo from him, and then, or whether somebody had designed their logo or something, just whatever it is, the more things I can take away to make their job easier, so that they can then get to where they need to with me. Or just whatever it might be. They need a local chiropractor. Maybe they need an attorney, they need whatever it might be. If I've got more things in my toolbox, that makes me more valuable. She walked out of here and said, can I have more of your brochures? Because I got some friends that I think I want to introduce you to. And it was more, I think, because the conversation was around all of the connections that I had, and she realized that I did. And she knew that how much it was just like, oh, this, you could see the sense of relief, like, oh, that's fantastic. I don't have to do that. Thank you. You can help me with that.
Having a wide network turns you into a rock star. The more people you know, the more connections you can make, and the more people you meet. So,
for sure.
You want to talk about, because so what you did was customer service 101, right? You said, I'm going to take this off your plate so that you don't have to do it. You don't have to find your headshot and send me the right format and the right size. I'm just going to ask the dude for the right size and the right format. So talk to me about customer service, because that's something a lot of folks don't remember how to do.
Right. Well, I think it is about listening and watching people's moods, I could see her pain point all of a sudden come into her face when I said, well, we will need to, if we're going to want to put your picture on this business card, we'll need to get that picture from your website. That's a beautiful picture. We can use that. And I could see her face squinch up, like, oh, what do I need to do? And so I said, well, here's what we're going to do. And here's how we're going to take care of it. Oh, okay. So it's listening to that pause when you say to someone, well, we need to make sure that the color is going to be right. Well, I'm not there where you're at. How can we do this? Well, how about I send you a video and I compare the paint, the color swatches we have to the material that's here, or I'll take a DTE energy bill or something that people commonly get and say, hey, you got one of those? What does that blue look like? So you've got to find the ways to make it easier for people. When you hear that pause, when you see that visual, when you hear it in their voice, I always try to think to myself, how can I make this easier for them? How can I take away some of that pain point from them? And just trying to work that, because I understand when I try to get something done for my business, and whether it's a website redesign, and I think, what are those things that I think, oh, it's gonna cause that pause for me to not get something done, and just trying to take that away from people, and just trying to think of, okay, what are they going through? What's going to prevent them? What's something they want to achieve, but it's preventing them from making it happen? And it might even be them saying, I got to get my taxes done, and my books are a mess, and I just never know what to do at tax time. It's like, oh gosh, okay, I got a virtual assistant, I got a QuickBooks person, I got a CPA that I can send you to, that will talk, the language that you need to, whatever it might be, whatever what's going on in their business, listening and knowing. And it is so invaluable when you've been in business as long as I have, and you've met as many people as I do, to be able to help them with all of those things, and maybe someone who's very young and new in the business would not be able to do that.
I want to talk about colors, but before I do that, I want to talk about CPAs just for a second. We made a horrible mistake, and we hired a CPA who specialized in larger small businesses. And we are a 2-person operation at our company. And it was a huge mistake. They were too much CPA for what we needed. And now I'm working with a guy who specializes in small businesses like mine, smaller operations like mine. And it's made a whole heap of difference. Yeah. So having more than one person to refer to is so important, because you do not want to give the wrong fit. All right, let's go back to colors. I have 2 monitors. This monitor, the monitor on my left is the monitor I use for graphic design, and the monitor on my right is the one I use for video calls and whatnot, because the colors on the one on the right are not as dynamic as the one on the left. So things on the right just they look oversaturated to me. And my husband's tried to calibrate the colors on the monitor. It just doesn't work. But when you are designing something, the way that the person looking at it sees it isn't going to be the way that you see it. So talk to me about that.
So we spend a lot of time educating people about color, and that is the one challenge, being virtual, that we figured out ways to overcome. But you are absolutely right. So a computer monitor creates colors from light coming from behind and coming through a screen, and it's called RGB color mode. It's a completely different color mode than when you print. When you put something, so RGB is red, green, blue, I think. And so I think about that. I never really think about it. And then when you print something, it's CMYK, cyan, yellow, magenta, and black. K stands for black. And so on a press, you've got 4 heads, and they're these 4 colors, and they create all the colors in the world. But it's completely different than a computer monitor with light coming through. And so colors are going to look more, in general, more vibrant. If you look at, I have had people tell me they're looking at a proof on their phone and it's red. What I've sent them is red. And what they look at is fuchsia. It's bright pink. And I said, no, it's not. So we have to try to tell people ahead of time, what you see in your computer monitor is not going to be what it's going to look like when it's printed. We have a box full of, call them paint swatches. They're Pantone books that show us, when something's printed on a press, what it's going to look like. And so the blue that you see in the logo I send you, and you look on one monitor or another, and all of my graphic designers have 2 monitors. So in our offices, I don't know how many we have, 20 monitors. Everything is different on every one of them. So I always say to my graphic designers, close your eyes, pretend like the color on the screen is nothing like what it's going to print. You have to rely on the color books to know what things are going to print like. And so we've had to do things like mail swatches to people, or go through the DT Energy. Hey, pull out a bill that you have, some common big company, and let's look at that color. And you tell me, is the color you want a little more blue, a little more green, a little more purple, a little more red, whatever it is, then whatever you're looking at. So we kind of have this, we try to get a point of reference. And if we can't do that because it's just some funky color, then we'll send them we'll print out and send them the color swatches in the mail, and then they can look through them. Or we have them physically come to the office and look through the color books. So color is a huge challenge, because even after we do all that, you put it on the press and it can still vary slightly from one day to the next. And if you go to Kinko's or FedEx or Office Max, they're using digital printers, and their color can vary hugely from one day to the next. If it's humid that day, if it's not humid that day, what the temperature is in the office, how much ink is in the toner cartridges. So it's, I would say that in the graphic design and printing world, that color is the biggest challenge that we have.
It's everything you just described is so complicated.
I
didn't know that humidity affected a digital printer.
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And in some places in some places like Texas, it's humid all the time, but in other places, you never know what weather you're going to get. I mean, right now it's so dry. I feel like all the moisture has been sucked out of my skin. I don't know about you.
Right.
I just moisturized like an hour ago, and already my face feels like it's so tight.
Yeah. Yeah.
When you have to moisturize more than once a day, you know it's dry.
Right.
Let's talk about branding in general. Why do you need to brand yourself right away from day one?
Well, I think that the biggest reason is that people are inundated with information, whether it be signs, things they get in the mail, things they see on the computer. And so it's so important to have let's just talk about a logo, because it starts with the logo. To have a logo that doesn't go against what your company stands for, represents. So for example, if there was a bank that lasted for a very short period of time. I can't remember the name of it, but their logo was this bright green and this bright yellow. And then it had another color too. It reminded me of a daycare. And so the colors, so the important thing is to stay within your industry, but yet be different enough, but don't go outside your industry. So if you're a financial planner, you're not going to have colors that are primary colors like a daycare or like crayons, like the Crayola 8 crayon set. You're not going to want that for your logo. So it's important people have a second to see and to know, try to understand what you're doing. So a logo can only do so much. So it's important to try to add a tagline if you can, but again, to not have it go against. So again, if you're a financial planner and you have some kind of imagery that relates to finance, that's good. The colors relate to it. You don't have soft, flowy bubbles and things like that. So there's a lot that goes into not only colors and graphics, but again, I think it's just important to have a strong and solid image that people get in a second, and then have all of your marketing materials and everything you do be within that branding set. If somebody gets a business card and they go to your website and then they get something from you in the mail and then they meet you at a networking function, all that stuff better look the same. The last thing you want to do is have somebody look at your business card and then go to your website and be like, is this the same company? And boy, have I seen that happen. And it was a case in point, the gal that I'm working with, to put her face on this business card. Her face is like, when you open up her website, it's the same picture. And so they get her business card and they go to the website and it's like, yeah, I'm in the right place.
It's amazing to me how often I'll meet somebody speed networking and go to LinkedIn and they don't look anything like what they look like. So it's also important to make sure that your images are up to date.
Absolutely.
Up to date. Okay. So everything you talked about, what about your personal brand? I mean, you brought it in, you sort of brought it in, but I interviewed a guy recently. His name is David Bear. His interview is really good. So the link will be in the show notes, but he is going to disagree with everything you just said. He thinks strategy comes before logo. And then if you don't have a strategy, but it's like strategy, logo, execute, right? I kind of feel like, and I'm disagreeing with both of you, but not really, right? Everything, I kind of feel like who I am as a person is more important than what my logo looks like. Like I need to show up authentically as me before, because I don't even use a logo. I'm not terrible. I took it off my website because I couldn't reconcile I couldn't get it to be the right personality. You know what I'm saying? I couldn't reconcile. So I just put my name on my website. But there's photos of me all over, right? Although I take the fact that my hair is black in the photos on my website, and I normally show up with pink hair. Probably need to fix that. But I'm showing up with black hair today. Just talk to me about the differences between personal branding and marketing branding that you just the important things like the colors, the logo, the fonts.
Right. Well, and I do want to back up and a little bit and talk about the fact that strategy does need to come first. I mean, before we design a logo for someone, we spend time talking to them about their business, about their target market. We do a logo guiding questionnaire where we get in depth. We look at competitors. We do a lot of research before to make sure. And there has been plenty of times where I have said to somebody, you need to talk to someone first and get more focused on what your business is going to be before we dive into doing a logo, because we don't want to start branding you one way and then have your business kind of go in another direction. So you need to be ready. And we have had people who maybe they just need business cards to kind of get started and get out there. And I say, let's do them generic. Let's not put colors into this. Let's not put a logo into this. Let's not use any fancy fonts. We're going to be just down and dirty, really generic, just until you get yourself established and really know and really be more focused about what your business is going to be. And then with regards to kind of the corporate marketing, business branding versus personal branding, I think that just depends on the business. If you're a CPA firm and you've got one CPA and then you've got a couple CPAs under, then people think of the business. They think of Hunter CPA, and they don't think of Brenda Hunter as the owner, whether she may be, but they think of the business itself. In your case, people think of Kandas Rodarty, and you do all these different things. And so personal branding, like you said, you have a lot of photos, and that is when the personality comes out, is in those photos. And so it's a completely different thing of doing the personal branding and the business or corporate branding. But I'll tell you, if somebody has a business, for example, my business, the Marketing Shop and Stillwater Branding, and all the things that if you look at my websites and what they look like, Stillwater branding and this elegant brand. And then if I showed up and you met me on a Zoom call, you met me in person, and I was completely inappropriate, I was throwing out profanity left and right. I showed up in a flannel shirt with no makeup on, and I kept turning the camera off, and I kept having to, quiet my dog in the background, and I had people running through. I mean, you would think this doesn't go together. And so it makes a big difference that's that personal branding part of it. And I'm telling you, I can probably talk for hours about the stories of people that we've met on Zoom calls and in meetings, and you think, what are you doing here? Focus. If you're going to spend your time showing up, you might as well show up and do it right.
Mm-hmm.
Or don't show up at all.
Well, also because you network, you're the face of your business. People will oftentimes be looking for you and not the name of your company, mm-hmm. which is something that happens when you do a lot of networking. So it's important that you put your name on your stuff as well, or it's easy. So if I Googled you, I would be able to find your business right away. Which is, we have a mutual friend, and he asked me to leave a Google review for him. So I Googled his name, and I couldn't find him. Mm-hmm. Finally, like on maybe the third page of the Google results, there he was. But it was, okay, if you want people to leave Google reviews for you, your name needs to be in your Google business profile so that people know who they're leaving the review for. So yeah, it's so important. It's so important that you have both the personal and the professional brand. And yeah, I can swear, because that's, I can say the F word in a meeting or whatnot, because that's my brand, right? Mm-hmm. But you can't. Yep, that's right. Well, and two, it depends the stage of the business. Because when I first had my business, it was me. I was the face. I was the only graphic designer. I owned the company. I did it all. And now over 20 years, now I have 6 graphic designers, and they go out and they network. And it used to be
the marketing shop and Vicky Winkler went hand in hand, and you could Google either one and you would get to the same place. But now I've stepped away more, and they are going out and doing more of the networking. So now it needs to become more of the marketing shop. I don't want people. I still get those clients that knew me in the beginning, and all they want is Vicky to work on their graphic design. They don't want Lauren. You don't want to pass it to Lauren. And I had to educate my clients that my staff is an extension of me. And so it's not Vicky Winkler you're coming to, you're coming to the marketing shop. And so again, as businesses grow, it becomes less, in some cases, in my case, it becomes less about me and more about the business.
I would guarantee that you have a landing page for each one of your staff members, though, so that they can be Googled, or you've done something so that people can look them up and find out where they work.
Yeah, well, they're on our webpage, although our website is being updated and redone. I looked and I said, time to redo this. I've got my Stillwater website, and it's all looking nice and classy. And then I look at my other one. So that's the phases of the business.
Oh yeah.
It was all great, 5 years or 4 years ago, whenever we redid it. But
things get updated all the time. I mean, I've had a website since 1998 or 99. I cannot remember if we launched it in 98 or 99, but let's just say 99 for chuckles, right? And 2007, 2008, this thing called CSS came out. So the website had to be redone. And then phones started, being the thing that people were looking at their websites on. So then the website had to be redone. So you're constantly having to update to keep up with technology. Who knows what the next thing is that we're going to have to keep up with? I mean, AI integration is, almost every day, I hear about a new AI integration for your WordPress website. It's like, really, it's just taking away. And actually WordPress, I think it's WordPress. I didn't dig into the article, but I'm pretty sure that in the next iteration of WordPress, which is coming out at the end of the month or at the end of March, that AI is going to be built into WordPress.
Yeah.
It's crazy. I mean, so things are moving so quickly, and you have to adapt. You have to adapt. Yeah. I pulled up a website the other day, and I looked at it and went, this was designed on front page.
Oh no. Oh,
this website is 20 years old, and it was designed on front page. I can tell.
And how is it still up and running? I say,
and how did it not break? Right.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Permanent hack. Yeah.
Okay, so we need to wrap up. We've basically talked about what your favorite marketing tool, tip, or technique is, which hopefully people got that it's networking. But do you want to dig into why?
I mean, I think that we probably did talk a lot about the networking, but I would say that I refer to networking as the light switch. When my business starts to slow down, like January is a slow month for us, and December we were so busy from September to December, that I forgot to turn the light switch on, which is going to networking functions. And we're involved in chambers, and we're involved in BNI and doing one-to-ones on my BNI. And we were so busy that we didn't do it, and we didn't fill the pipeline. And so I had to turn that light switch on abruptly and quickly in January to get referrals starting to come and getting work to start to come in the door. So that's how I always refer to networking. It's you got to turn that light switch on. You got to leave the lights on. And when you turn the lights off, all of a sudden the room's going to get dark. So you got to just always have the lights on.
Sounds like a Motel 6 commercial. We'll leave the light on for you.
Right.
All right. Hold the phone. I just said something really profound. We'll leave the light on for you as Motel 6's thing, right? There. Yeah. And when you talk about leaving the light on, I immediately went to Motel 6. Now, how do you do that for your business? How do you come up with that hook?
Oh, I think some of it's luck. I mean, whoever thought that the Aflac duck would become what it became? It was some quirky idea of somebody sitting in a conference room with a couple of other creatives, and they said, let's do it. I really don't know the whole story behind the Aflac duck.
Quack rhymes with Aflac. Quack, Aflac. That's probably where it came from.
Maybe. I'll have to Google the history of that. So some of it is luck, and in the case of Motel 6, a lot of money.
Yeah. Well, that's true. That's
Yeah.
true.
And that's really it, is just getting that message out there.
I was going through an exercise with some of my coaching clients about messaging and theme, the mission, defining the mission of your company. And the mission of I'll look it up and I'll link to it in the show notes. But the mission of Coca-Cola is to make people feel happy, and you can see that in everything they do.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've been to the Coca-Cola factory in Atlanta, and it is really fun to be there. You know, there's like this fountain that sprays Coca-Cola over your head, and it's just so much fun.
Oh.
So they really do. They spend a lot of time working on making sure that everything they do makes you feel good, makes you happy. Happiness is their brand, right?
Yeah.
And so I think, right, it's a lot of money, a lot of time, a lot of focus, and just staying true to the mission.
Mm-hmm.
True to the mission. Anyway, this has been a really fun conversation. I'm so glad that we have finally had it, because I've been wanting to talk to you on air for a while. We talk to each other regularly. Like I feel like you're the only person I ever talk to on the phone.
Right. Because of my panic, desperate calls. Kandas, I need to talk to you now.
But I know it's so funny how phone used to be the way that we communicate. Now I hardly ever talk on the phone. It's really strange. Anyway, I really hope the audience got a lot from this, because I am really lucky to have you in my network, and I just, I love you so much. I put you in my highest package, right? In my premier package. So I appreciate you. Now it's your turn. This is your moment of gratitude. For whom or what are you most grateful?
Yeah. So I said right before when we were talking, I kind of have two stories. One is a personal story, and one is my business story. I'll tell my business story first because it's short. But what I was really grateful for was during COVID, when they started announcing the shutdowns. As a business owner, I was devastated, of course, as many were. And I thought, what am I going to do? Now, because we do print materials and we were able to print like COVID graphics and posters and things like that, we were able to stay open. But I had to send all my employees home and have them go remote. We had to figure out how to do all that, because we aren't a remote office. We're a creative team, and we're all here and we share ideas. We had to go remote. And I'm just grateful of those employees that through the PPP loan, that I was able to keep them with me, and they stuck it out. They stuck it out with me. They embraced it. They figured out, Vicky, we're going to make this work. We're going to make this happen, and we're not going to fold. And so I'm very grateful for that during that time. And so I'll give the personal life story, because this is one about sometimes the impact you make that you don't know, and sometimes don't realize that you're doing it till years later. My girlfriend has a best friend. My daughter's 20 years old, and she is still her best friend to the day. During the time when they were growing up, they met in first grade. This girl kind of came from a little bit of a troubled home. And so she had a little bit of a struggle with the home life. And so she spent a lot of time at our house. And she was like a second daughter to me. And she spent the night. We would go to dinner. I would take her to school. I would have the talks after sex education class, things that she had no one there for her. And so she's still my daughter. She sent me a thank you card a few months ago. And it was just this long little note about what an impact I had had on her life, how she always thought of me as that second mom, that mom she never had. And how the things I taught her that she takes into her life today, she's become this beautiful, wonderful young woman, despite all the struggles she's had in her life. She's in college, she has friends, and she's still my daughter's best friend. And she's still a second daughter to me. And so that was my moment of gratitude, never doing it, never expecting anything, just doing it because I loved her and I loved my daughter, and she was wonderful to have around. And then for her to take the time to send me that's what life is all about. And the impacts that you don't know that you're going to make on people. So you just do them. You just do what's the right thing.
Thanks for tuning in to Gratitude Geek, where we help DIY marketers attract raving fans and repeat buyers. Don't forget to check out the show notes at gratitudegeek.com for links to all the resources mentioned in this episode. If you enjoyed it, please leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. Our theme music is by Rev Brock and Solely. I'm Kandas Rodardi, reminding you that gratitude is like manure. It's just a pile of poo until you spread it around. Stay groovy, my friends.
Stay groovy, my friends.